Teachers came from across the province with a message for the government. 170 busloads from 5 different unions. Upset about proposed changes, including the loss of almost 3,500 positions over 4 years and larger high school class sizes. Unions say some classes could have 40 or 45 students.
That's insane. Right now, I have 33 kids in each of my classes, and I can barely fit all my desks in there.
On December 4th, 2019, the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, or OSSTF, held a province-wide one-day strike to protest the government's cuts to education. In the following weeks, school board teachers across the province would continue to have more one-day strikes. We interviewed the president of the OSSTF, Harvey Bishop, to find out why the federation is striking.
The issues are significantly, it's teacher and support staffing. So we're saying that we should have the same ratio of teachers and support staff to students as we had last year, that there's no reason to diminish the quality of education this year. We're saying that e-learning should be studied before there's any move to make it mandatory, so that we understand what the effects might be on our students. And really, those are the primary issues. They are quality of education issues.
We tried to get in contact with the Ministry of Education for comment, but they did not reply to our calls or emails. So we talked to Ryan Bird, spokesperson for the TDSB, about the effects of raising class sizes is having on students.
At this point, we have raised class sizes as per the directive from the Ministry of Education last year, and that did result in fewer choices for students, just given the fact that when you have less staff, there are less options that can be taken in our high school classes.
We've already seen kids who couldn't get access to classes they needed to graduate. Across the province, tens of thousands have lost course options because every classroom teacher lost to the system leaves with 6 courses that they taught.
To get a better insight into the education system, we interviewed Rissa Gluskin.
So my job is student success teacher. So that means I'm kind of monitoring and mentoring, coaching, advising, nagging, whatever you want to call it, students that we might call at risk, which means they have some academic difficulties which causes them to get low marks. I really noticed that a lot of the students that I work with are struggling in the larger classes. And I'm not saying that anecdotally because I've actually been into the classes.
Average class sizes will grow, which will mean that individual students will have less access to the professional attention that they might need in order to succeed.
So I've seen my actual students in their classes, and I can see their disengagement when there's 30 plus kids in the class and the teacher's just, struggling to get their lessons done and get everybody's attention.
A number of difficult decisions had to be made during the last budget year when the board faced a $67.8 million budget shortfall. It's a reality that we had to make some reductions, that kind of thing, so that we could meet our financial obligations.
The reduction in the number of teachers means that some courses will be lost, and the ones that become almost impossible to run are the ones that have reason that they need to be kept small.
Last year, TDSB actually published a document listing the course sections that were cut when class sizes were increased, and it was listed school by school.
Although increased class sizes can be seen by every student, students who need the most help, students with higher risk of dropout, who choose less common career paths, or are new to Canada, are the ones being affected the most.
Putting those students in a situation where they don't have the same kind of support is going to jeopardize their ability to succeed.
So often the students that I work with have weaknesses in what we call executive function. That's like time management, decision making, self-regulation, impulse control. All those things are really hard to manage for kids no matter what. When you put a student into a bigger class and they have those deficits, those weaknesses, and there's only one teacher and they can't be everywhere, and there's more and more at-risk students in the classes, they're pretty much just sitting there not really absorbing anything, not getting anything. And it's hard for them to get the teacher's attention other than in a negative way, like put your phone away or be quiet or sit down. If we could all, of course, in a perfect world, have one teacher to one student, that'd be great. We know that's not gonna happen, but bigger class sizes is causing a huge problem for students who are already weak.
Private schools have been taking advantage of the worsening situation in the public education system by advertising their small class sizes and a variety of course choices.
We've seen this before, a government that attacks the public education system. They reduce public's confidence in the quality of the public education system, and then some will go elsewhere. They'll go to a private system. Unintended consequences arise when a government goes forward with cuts and really doesn't understand the system that they're working in. And what happens is the kids who get left behind in the public system are the hardest to serve kids, and it gets harder and harder to support those students in a system where more and more students need, sort of intense support because the money is just drained away to the private systems.
Education cuts don't only affect students, but also affect teachers' ability to do their jobs.
I believe there's a lot more expectations on teachers now than when I went through school.
Our classrooms look very different from what they did even 10 or 20 years ago in terms of the inclusion of students with various kinds of special needs.
When I went through school, you got a test and you got a test and you did the test. You did it within the time period. Parents are demanding a lot more of teachers now. I don't think it's a bad thing that they're demanding more, but they're demanding more, but we have less resources than what we had before.
Our proposal for a cost of living increase, so tied to inflation, is the same for all of our members. For the last 7 years, my members have fallen behind inflation year after year. So we're saying it's time to put something structural in place that will just allow them to keep up. It means that in real terms, their salary next year is the same as their salary this year.
A consequence of increasing class size and a reduction of the number of teachers is the government's new plan to make 2 e-learning courses mandatory for graduation.
When the minister talks about his models for this program, one that he points to is Alabama.
The Ontario government is basing its new e-learning model off the Florida and Alabama models, where students are required to take 1 e-learning course to graduate. Although when you look at the United States educational ranking, Florida is ranked 33rd, while Alabama is ranked 45th. Is this really what we want our education system to be based off of? In 2019, TDSB commissioned PhD student Behan Farhadi to research the effects e-learning will have on the students.
What was really clear in my findings in Toronto was that the students who chose e-learning were in high achieving schools largely. And those, you're familiar with the 3 cities map. They were mapped along the sort of more sort of wealthy areas of the city, and the city particularly is racialized and multicultural. And so I'm sitting here thinking about what it means to promote a multicultural learning environment. I'm thinking about what it means that we have really stark contrast between students who are resourced and under-resourced, and what that looks like along racial and cultural lines.
E-learning courses aren't about teaching kids how to use the technology. They're about teaching other curriculum through a technology. So for those kids who already have the skills to work with the technology, then they can probably learn the curriculum. For those who don't have those skills, they won't be taught how to use the technology. E-learning by itself is a massive barrier. It is, I would argue, just flat out discriminatory against kids who can't afford the technology, can't afford the access to broadbands. They don't succeed at the same rate in e-learning that they do in face-to-face classrooms. We've spent the last 15, 16 years really improving equity in education in Ontario, and shrinking the gap between students who come from different ends of the socioeconomic spectrum, shrinking the gap between new Canadians and those who have been here for some time. And this is just going to worsen that gap.
I suspect that there are going to be many, many students left behind.
So what does the government think the future of education is going to look like?
For a minister who wants to claim that he's listening to parents, he clearly is not, and clearly what they're looking at is not quality of education, but simply cutting costs out of a system that should be recognized not just as an expense, but an investment in Ontario's future.
So, when it comes to protecting what matters most, what's more important to them? The future of education or protecting their bottom line?
We don't need no thought control.